Well, this is long overdue. What's up guys, and welcome back to Writing Things. It's been a long time since I've been in front of the camera. I will explain that at the end of the video, and there has been a bit of a new setup in the way that I do things. But I think this is going to help me get my message across easier and also sound a little bit more like me. Today I'm going to be sharing with you how I actually plot my books, and this was a suggestion from fellow author Donna Scavotti, author of The Chiller with Heart and the coming of age suspense thrillers Just Jonathan and Deadly Vendetta. So let's get this underway and I'll talk with you how I like to plot my books. Small note before we get started, this does not include The Taste Beneath, because that was pretty much all bred on its own, and that was a course of over 7 years, whereas now I have a different format and a bit more of an understanding when it comes to plotting my novels. As always, I don't have the tech to put anything on screen, so get your pen and paper ready, your green tea, and let's get straight into this. Point number one, your pre-planned bits. And for any author, you will understand what I'm talking about, that you might have that one magic scene, that one magic moment, that payoff, that twist, that plot reveal that's been in your head for possibly years, and you've always wondered, how can I work this into a story? I've had it multiple times with my books, particularly with Insidious Valor that I'm writing now. There's a moment in this, I've spoken about it quite a bit, where I've thought about this moment since late 2010. When you have these pre-arranged thoughts in your head, you then need to start adjusting whether they're going to become major plot points or just cool little bits that you want throughout your book. There's no right or wrong with this, and if you have this idea in your head, I actually think you should explore it a hell of a lot, because it is a fun thing to do, and if it means this much to you, you should have it in your story. When you have this pre-arranged moment, you then need to start identifying which characters are going to play a part in it, because as much as you might think it could be your main character or a certain other character, when it comes to outlining your plot, this could actually happen to a different character. But as long as you have the whole theme for the idea and you've built it up, this is where you need to start identifying basically who this is going to happen to. You will want it to happen to your main character, but sometimes it doesn't always work out that way. Not to give spoilers away for The Taste Beneath, because I want you all to read it. The end of The Taste Beneath, there is a choice scene, and it happens with my main character Ryan and two other protagonists called Doc and Sam. This idea spawned into my head in late 2019, just before the lockdown started. The way this scene was going to play out was going to be a little bit different. There was always going to be Ryan in there, but it wasn't going to be Doc and Sam. It was going to be two other characters as well. And when I started learning more about plotting whilst I was writing The Taste Beneath, I realised that this situation wasn't feasibly possible. So when it came to the plotting part of it, I really had to step back, and as much as I wanted this plot point to work, and it had been in my head for the best part of a year when it came to writing The Taste Beneath, the way I had originally planned it didn't really come to fruition or make sense. I had to take a step back and figure out who these other characters would be, and as the story went on and I started to develop Doc and Sam a bit more, it made more sense for those two to be involved in this certain plot point. So to end point one, if you have these pre-arranged moments in your head, keep them there and just explore with them, because it won't be as, what's the phrase I'm looking for? It won't be as clear cut when it actually comes to writing your novel, and it sometimes won't make sense if you stick to it the way it is, depending on what else you've done with your book, because sometimes forcing your characters into a situation that doesn't make sense can really abstract the reader, or extract the reader, as I should say, from what you're trying to get across, and it will take away from this special moment that you've been planning for ages. Point number two, basic outlining. Now, if you're a full-on, I'm really going to hate saying this word, pantster, but if you're one of them, I still recommend you have a basic outline. If you're a hardcore plotter, you might want to do something similar to what I've done with Insidious Valor, which I'll show you in a second, but you have to be aware that the plot will change because your characters have their own lives. So this was the outline that I did for Insidious Valor, and I can already tell you that the top 3 chapters it would be have already changed, because I started off with Ryan going to France, and for anyone who's read my books will know that my main character will not abandon his people just to go to a meeting, so that automatically changed. But when you structure it out like this, you can really get a sense of not only what you want to happen, but the pacing as well. And when you read back through it, as I did here, stuff changed. It had to be changed and chopped around when it came to Insidious Valor, because it was taken away from the pacing. It was either slowing it down or speeding it up way too much. When I came to plotting Insidious Valor, I knew that like my other books, it could be read as a standalone, but it also has to be a continuation. I've kind of shot myself in the foot with putting that responsibility on me. But having it laid out, what I thought was going to be chapter by chapter, helped me understand the structure of Insidious Valor. To give you an insight, for anyone who's read my first 2 books, they're very linear, even though that the perspectives do change. But with Insidious Valor, after I did that plot in there, I realised I have to do something different that I've never done before. My third book is broken down into 3 individual parts, with the first part being Ryan and Mikey's perspective, even though they're in different countries. Part 2 is going to be from Harper and Rook's perspective, even though Rook is still in the same area as Mikey. Harper is away doing something else, and I knew if I had Ryan, Mikey, Harper, Rook in these first 2 bits, it was just going to be an information overload. And unless I named the chapters, it would be hard for readers to keep up. So after I did that basic plotting that you've seen there, I understood that, okay, keep Ryan's story and Mikey's the forefront of the first bit. Then come away to Harper and Rook's for this own sort of separate story, which is still within the world that I've created. But this part of the story I knew had to be told from a fresh lens to let the reader know, okay, Ryan is not going to be in this so much. Let's focus so much on this part of the story. And with part 3 going back to strictly just Ryan's perspective. You can write it down like this if you want to. I know some other authors who have different methods, but this works for me, just getting it out of my head and just seeing what the first idea in my head looked like. And when I went through it again, it just wasn't really matching up to what I wanted to tell. Even though the story plot points were there, how I wanted to originally do it doesn't feel right to the actual story. Then after that, when it comes to the basic plotting, and I realised that wouldn't work, just taking random notes. This whole folder here is for Insidious Valor. That's my third book. I've got a folder for each book of where, if I'm at work, I get a random idea in my head, I will quickly jot it down and it all goes into there. And this helps me also going on to part 3. Going to part 3, something I think that should be at the forefront of every author's mind is character arc and development. For anyone who's read my books, you know that my books put the characters first and then the plot goes into it. So with the forefront of my books is a main character called Ryan, and when I sit down with the plots, I want to know where this is going to take Ryan. With The Taste Beneath, at the beginning of the book, Ryan is very naive and hot-headed, and at the end of the book, he has to make a decision that will, you know, take the life of someone that's brought his people harm, or realise that violence doesn't solve everything. With Diseased Intentions, when it comes to the end of that book, had Ryan learnt his lesson from the end of the first book, the choice he made, and how smart was he now and what cards was he going to play. I'm not giving away spoilers. When it came to my second book, I knew that I could not have Ryan end up the same way he did at the end of The Taste Beneath, because then there is no learning, there is no journey, and there is no character building. And with Insidious Valor, I've had so much more fun with Ryan, because for anyone who's seen any of my snippets, Blood Ryan is coming. I've been holding back this character for a while, and I've had so much fun writing it. My editors and my beta readers have loved it so far. But it's not just about your main character. There are other sub-characters in there as well who need their own development. Some can stay the same because not everyone changes, and some people have to remain the same and strong. This is the same in real life. So I've decided to do that with a character called Dominic, one of the fan favourites. He's one of the nicest people at the Vineyard. But with other characters, I've had to go further and harder, particularly with Mikey because of what he's now suffering with, and with Steph, who's obviously gone through a lot. It will change people. And one of my favourite character arcs is Insidious Valor. I knew how I was going to build her up a bit, was Cassie. It was her time to take the stand. She's essentially Ryan's innocence, Ryan's angel, but with the world that they live in and the choices and decisions they're having to make, she's going to have to step up because Ryan is about to be unleashed, and she's going to have to become, I don't want to say that badass because it's just such a cheesy term these days. She's going to have to do things that no one would ever thought possible. But that's just sort of what I've put into it. And I guess what I'm trying to say with this is that when it comes to your character development, it does need to match your plot as well. So if you have your plot semi-lined out like that and you're taking notes, you can then understand what your character is going to go through. And the shitter with this is, as your character grows and builds, it might change your plot because what you originally had in store for them might not make sense for them just to throw themselves in that situation. You'll maybe have to dig yourself out of a corner and think, okay, I still want that plot point to happen, but how do I get my character there? Because they're not as naive as before. It's a fun and hard journey when you have to dig yourself out of a corner. I have so much fun getting myself out of it because I tend to think of some of the dumbest and stupidest things that don't make sense, which inevitably leads me on to the right path. It does take time, but I highly recommend that once you've got your character arc and development in your head sorted out, then match it up to the plot and see what works and what doesn't, maybe what you have to change then. This leads me on to point number 4, filling in plot holes. And as I've said, you can dig yourself into a plot hole even before you've even started your character arc. If you take notes like I have done with what I've shown you for Insidious Valor and you match it out, it's important to note that once you've done your structure for your plot, however your method is do not start immediately writing the story right away. I recommend giving it 2 or 3 weeks of just looking at it, taking notes and seeing what works and what doesn't. You will come across plot holes or something that will not make sense to the rest of the structure, even if it's a part that you want in, and that's where you have to adapt or either change that certain part of it. Even if you change the location of what you want to happen or the character that it happens to, you still need to identify it, because if you go into your story with this plot hole, it will take more damage to undo it whilst you're mid-writing then it will getting ahead of yourself. This doesn't mean that you have to become a full-time plotter. I consider myself in the middle. I've spoken about this before. I like to plot out as you've seen, but I also like my characters to tell the story. It's just the balance that works for me, and you need to find what works for you as well. There's nothing worse than rushing over a plot hole just because you want something to happen. So give yourself the time once you've got your plot points out and see just what it is that maybe damages your story. Step number 5, selecting plot points. And this is more applicable to people who have multiple perspectives in their story. It's good to switch back and forth, and sometimes it's necessary to the pacing that you hurry something up or you don't. If you have something major that's going to happen to one of your protagonists caused by your antagonist, you need to figure out the build up from your antagonist's perspective, or if you're going to show that at all, because sometimes the element of surprise is what catches the reader off guard. Understanding that maybe one scene from your protagonist is good to maybe set a nice mood and then switch to the antagonist who is stalking your protagonist and have that tension build up the two. This is very fun to do, and it's nice to switch back and forth between them because you will actually feel yourself get excited and also dread what is about to happen. This happened with Diseased Intentions with a certain case of mistaken identity, which I played on could have been one character, but I also did the build up for it. When you select your plot points for these, understand the pacing, understand the risks, and understand the effect of what it is that you're writing. You can write just from one perspective, just have it from your protagonist so it comes out straight the gate like a shock and surprise, or you can have it from your antagonist to show just how cunning, ruthless, or manipulative, or even prepared, which is a scary thing for antagonists to have. If they're prepared and one step ahead and you show it from their perspective, that will have the reader on edge, because not just for that scene but for other scenes in future, wondering just where else this antagonist can go and what else they're capable of. I stuttered a bit there, but that was my 5th take trying to say that sentence, so it's going in. So when it comes to plotting my books, I have certain set scenes that I do want to see in the book, but at the forefront of plotting I always put my characters first and what I want to see grow within them and how they can adapt to certain situations. Once I know what my characters are going to go through, and once I know these certain scenes that I think are just fucking awesome, that's when I start to write down the plot. And as you've seen there with that list, I will go in my head what I think will be chapter by chapter. Then I give it 2 or 3 weeks looking at it saying, okay, this will work, that makes sense, that doesn't make sense, Ryan would never do that, Ryan might do this instead. It's a 2 to 3 week process before I even start to write any chapters. But plotting and planning is fun overall. I thoroughly enjoy it because it gets me excited for what I'm about to write, and then once I'm writing I realise that no, my characters have got a different perspective on it. And then the further I go into my plotting, that's when I figure out that this plot point not work, or I maybe explained this situation way too hard. I need to cut that down to build this situation up. I then figure out if I'm going to have any antagonist perspective or how many perspectives of my protagonist, And that's when I take the final step back, just overall look everything and say, okay, this works, this doesn't work. That's going to take time to rewrite if I go into it and fuck it up. So let's get this straight, let's get this point down, and let's get this timeline nailed. So yeah, that's how I planned Insidious Valor, and it's what I'm going to take into book 4 as well, which does already have a title in my head. If you're a first time author out there, the way you plot your book is entirely up to you. I've just given you a subjective way of the way I do it. Just remember your character arcs, your plot holes, your plot points, and those big magical moments, and how you can get your characters from there, which makes sense within the story that you're trying to tell. So I'm going to finish up and tell you why the setup is a slightly little bit different now, why I'm probably talking a little bit different, and you know, I'm just sitting here with my mug of tea. I've gone back and watched some of my older videos, and when I'm sitting back like this and I have my script there and I'm trying to remember each paragraph as I go, I talk very robotically, and it's not how I talk in, not like right now. This is how I'm supposed to be talking. Until I've learned to read from a script fully, I'll be doing all videos or more in-camera videos in this more calm, relaxed method, because it works out so much more for me. I actually feel less stressed just doing this video now. I actually feel like I'm talking to someone instead of trying to remember the script in my head. And with this, I've managed to start a new upload schedule as well. So Wednesdays will be my facecam vids where I play Modern Warfare 3 or Warzone, and I just talk about some of the guns and just have a bit of general fun. Fridays will be my Warzone ramblings, which is going to be my equivalent of a blog now, just over some Warzone footage as well, but where I talk about writing stuff, movies I'm excited for, or movies that I think are shit. And every Sunday I'll be uploading an in-camera video as well. So welcome back, guys. It's been good to talk to you like this. Yes, Beyond Fiction is coming, and yes, I am putting that video off because it's one of the... I said it for the Ian Watkins video, I said it for Jonestown, but this one there, I don't want to do it, but I'm going to. It'll be up next week, I promise. I'll probably record it on Thursday. If you did like this video, please leave a cheeky like and let me know in the comments what you'd like to see more or what I can do better. If you're new here, please subscribe. I'm very new on this YouTube journey. I'm currently learning as I go, but I'm having so much fun with it. I'm really enjoying this part of my life and getting more just content out there and speaking to you guys. As always, much love. Take care. Peace.